Hello YouTube. This is my review for Jerry Bruckheimer's, Disney's, and Nicolas Cage's new film, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Before we get into any detail on anything else, I'm going to give my first recommend or not see. And this is a recommend with a stipulation. It's a recommended if you have already seen Inception. If you haven't seen Inception and you're going to the movies, go see Inception. I do recommend that over this, and that's kind of the problem this movie's having. It's not a bad movie. It's a very fun movie, but it's coming out the same week that a great movie is coming out. If this came out this coming weekend, it would have done fine. It also has the problem that it's right there in the middle between adult. It does work as applying to both adults and family film, i.e., children's film. Kids can watch this and adults can watch this, and both will equally enjoy it. That's a great success that you normally don't see happen too often. Normally, if they try to be family films, they're just kid films, and none of the adults, teenagers, or older people will like it. This one works. The problem is because of that, it's getting torn between both audiences. The adults are going to see Inception, and the families and the kids are going to see Despicable Me. So it's not that the movie's bad, it's just it has really tough competition that it's coming out pretty much after. Throat there. So let's get into the actual movie. Semi-spoiler alerts at this time. First, I'm going to get my big analysis onto this. Why I actually really like this movie. That's just not as enough as Inception. What this movie has its theme is that science and magic do not conflict with each other. Science and magic can work, no problem. That's how magic works. It's magic itself is part science. Nicolas Cage describes in this film that human sorcerers or wizards are able to they're able to use 100% of their mind, and that enables them to manipulate the environment. But he acknowledges that there is something more than that. He kind of hints that there is more than this that science part of what magic is. That there's something deeper, and of course, that wouldn't be able to explain why he's able to turn a statue into a metal eagle that flies around and seems to have its own mind. And it just goes with it. And I like that. Most other films, when they deal with this subject, it's either science trumps magic or magic trumps science. Uh, it's either magic never existed, it was always science, or science is a very limited art, magic is around and it's much more powerful than science. There's no problem. The sorcerers will equally use science and magic combined. They don't question it. They don't see any conflicts in it, and I really like that film. You could apply that to faith in the 21st century. Why most people that have faith, we look at the extremes like the creationist movement and stuff, but we have to acknowledge that very few people that actually go to church on a regular basis believe in that. Most don't see any conflict with science. There's extreme atheists, and then there's extreme religious groups that see a conflict between science and religion. But in reality, the vast majority of members of both don't, especially on the Christian side, or not even this on the religious side, but also many atheists too, don't really see any conflict between the two. Many atheists are fine with people believing what they believe. If you really think about it, there's a lot of atheists that are very much into fantasy stuff and sorcery. I know a lot of friends of mine who are you'd say atheists or more agnostic. They don't see any they love the fantasy and magic, D&D, all that stuff. And it's not like my very Christian friends, or very religious friends, I should say, because some of them are Jewish and Muslim faith. They like it as well. They don't see it as pagan or evil, and that's kind of, I think, what this film is kind of acknowledging. In real life, there's not a conflict between mystical and science. You can acknowledge both. A very interesting theme. Uh, I hope I'm not losing any of you by not talking about the actual film at this point. Uh, if I'm going to get into the film, what part should I talk about first? I think it's we have to acknowledge they have a great sense. I love the sense of humor in this film. They reference stuff, but they kind of wink when they're referencing stuff. They so you can't really go, oh, they have no originality. No, they know when they're making fun of something, and there's two that really stand out. Well, I don't think one's definitely more of a wink than the other. The bad guy at one point sneaking into NYU and wants the information on the Sorcerer's Apprentice Dave, all his class information, and if he has a lab checked out and all that stuff where he's conducting his experiments. And when he asks the guy behind the counter, he's like, "Well, I'll need to see your faculty identification card." And he pulls out his cane and he goes, "You don't need to see my faculty identification card." And the guy looks at him and he's like, "I don't need to see your faculty identification card." Great Star Wars reference there, and it actually worked in the scene. The only thing that was, I think they put a little bit too much of acknowledging that, was there's another evil sorcerer or semi-evil sorcerer that's kind of following around Alfred Molyneux's character, who most of you probably know as Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2. His character's name is Horvath. This guy's following around Horvath, and he just kind of looks over and he goes, waves his hand, he goes, "These are not the droids you're looking for." I did get a chuckle on it, but I think that was putting too much of a lampshade on that joke. The other big scene that they did was actually what inspired the entire movie. Nicolas Cage talked about this, that when he was watching Fantasia, the famous scene where Mickey has been left to clean up the workshop of Merlin or whatever sorcerer he's working for, and so he uses all his magic powers to turn the mops and everything to give them life, and they just go clean, and he goes off and does his own thing, enjoying the relaxing, and of course they go absolutely insane. And there's a scene in this where Dave is preparing for, who's the main protagonist is Dave, who's preparing for a date to come over, and the place is a mess, so he decides to use his magic to spruce up the place while he goes in the showers, and of course it goes absolutely batshit wrong. And so many of the scenes though are literally, and it's not like they're taking it very verbatim, but they add a few new things in there. But there's so much, if you've watched the film, you go, "Oh, I remember that part from Fantasia. I remember that part from Fantasia. I remember them doing that in Fantasia." And they're even playing the music from Fantasia. Not a redo of the music from Fantasia. No, they're playing the original soundtrack from Fantasia. Perhaps it was re-recorded by a more modern orchestra, but they didn't add any new notes or anything. Again, another thing I love it when films respect the source material, because this really is the source material for this film. And just that one scene inspired the entire movie, according to Cage and the producers, which is great, because I count that as being original. If you're going to base an entire movie around, not even based, but inspired by one scene in a classic film, that's okay. That's still an original ideal. It's not like that one scene laid out this plot of Arthurian characters and Merlin's apprentices, finding apprentices in modern Nurg. No, very basic idea that just got him. Ooh, sorry, I just ate there, so I had a little post-dinner hiccup. So where was I? Yes. So I count this original, which is another great check for this season. For this summer season, is another, I would consider, original film. I'm going to get a little bit more into the plot in part 2, so stick around for that.